Good afternoon. You're watching A News. I'm Dilek Tuna. These are the headlines. Syria announces a ceasefire after the latest outbreak of violence. Thousands of Afghan nationals brought to the UK under secret program after a data leak. Devastating floods have hit parts of the US, leaving 2 people dead and entire neighbourhoods underwater. A deadly week of violence in Syria's Druze majority Suwaida province may be easing after Damascus announced a ceasefire and Israel launched strikes in defence of the Druze community. Nearly 100 people have been killed and the humanitarian situation remains dire.
In Syria's southern Suwaida city, a tense calm hangs in the air after the Ministry of Defence announced a full ceasefire. The decision follows days of deadly clashes between Druze militias and Bedouin tribal fighters that killed at least 99 people. According to the UK-based Syrian Observatory for Human Rights, the dead include 60 Druze among them, 4 civilians, as well as 18 Bedouin fighters, 14 government troops, and several unidentified individuals. The Defence Ministry confirmed 18 military casualties. The violence, which began Friday, quickly spiraled into street battles across the governorate, forcing thousands to flee and prompting the imposition of a citywide curfew. On Tuesday morning, convoys of Syrian army tanks and trucks rolled into the city, with the backing of Druze spiritual leaders who had earlier urged fighters to surrender and allow government troops to restore order. But by the afternoon, the tone shifted with top Druze cleric Sheikh Hikmat al-Hajri accusing government forces of violating ceasefire terms and shelling residential areas. The ongoing chaos triggered a swift response from Israel, which launched airstrikes on Syrian positions in Suwaida and near Damascus. Tel Aviv framed the move as a defense of Syria's Druze minority, a community with deep ties to Israel. Prime Minister Netanyahu stated that Israeli forces were ordered to strike Syrian units entering Suwaida, vowing to prevent harm to Druze civilians and maintain the demilitarization of the Israeli-Syrian border zone.
For more on this, we go to Blake Sifton, who reports from Tel Aviv.
The Israeli military carried out what it called exceptionally large-scale attacks on a Syrian military convoy as it approached the Druze city of Suwaida in southern Syria on Tuesday. That city has been the site of clashes between militias from the Druze community and Bedouin clans, at times backed by the Syrian military, over the last few days that have seen the deaths of dozens of people. The Israeli military said that the airstrikes targeting this convoy targeted tanks, armored personnel carriers, as well as multiple rocket launchers. And these attacks Tuesday followed earlier Israeli military airstrikes that targeted a convoy of Syrian tanks as they also approached the city of Suwaida on Monday. Under pressure from its own Druze minority, the Israeli government has positioned itself as the protector of Syria's Druze community following the downfall of former Syrian President Bashar al-Assad in December. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and Defense Minister Israel Katz said in a joint statement on Tuesday that Israel is committed to preventing harm being inflicted on the Druze in Syria, owing to the deep covenant of blood with our Druze citizens in Israel. In addition to positioning itself as this protector of the Druze community in Syria, Israel has also vowed to enforce the demilitarization of southern Syria and prevent armed groups from entering the region next to the Golan Heights, which it controls. Blake Sifton for A News in Tel Aviv.
Russia carried out a major overnight assault on Ukraine, launching 400 drones and a ballistic missile that targeted several regions, including Kharkiv, Kryvyi Rih and Vinnytsia. Ukraine's Air Force says most drones were intercepted, but 12 targets were still hit. At least 2 people were killed near the town of Kupiansk in Kharkiv region. In Kryvyi Rih, a missile and 28 drones caused serious damage, leaving a 17-year-old boy critically injured and cutting power and water in some areas. In Vinnytsia, 8 people were wounded, according to Ukraine's Interior Ministry. American military aid has already been shipped to Ukraine. That's according to US President Donald Trump. It's after his meeting with NATO Chief Mark Rutte this week, where he laid out plans to supply Kyiv with weapons at the expense of the European Union.
US President Donald Trump says a new batch of weapons have already been shipped to Ukraine. The move follows the meeting he had with NATO Secretary General Mark Rutte on Monday. Trump announced plans to supply Kyiv with military aid, including Patriot missiles, funded by the alliance members.
Do you think the first Patriot missiles, some of these weapons that our allies will buy?
They're already being shipped.
From what countries?
They're coming in from Germany and then replaced by Germany, and in all cases, the United States gets paid back in full. So what's happening, as you know, is the European Union, if you look, mostly European Union stuff, but let's put it in the form of NATO. It's very similar. But NATO is going to pay us back for everything.
Trump also announced a 50-day grace period for Moscow, after which the United States will impose secondary tariffs at 100% on Russia and its trade partners if a peace deal on Ukraine is not reached. Russia has dismissed Trump's tax hikes as the result of pressure from the European Union and NATO, saying it will manage the economic consequences.
We, after all, an unprecedented number of sanctions against us have already been announced, and we are coping. I have no doubt that we will cope. This conclusion is also based on an assessment on the analysis of independent, including many Western economists and politicians.
Trump has not communicated with Russian President Vladimir Putin since announcing the new threat of sanctions. His tougher stance towards Russia reflects growing frustration with President Putin as the war in Ukraine continues without a resolution.
US President Donald Trump has signalled that Washington is not currently planning to provide Ukraine with longer-range missiles capable of striking deep into Russian territory. While air defence systems remain a priority, discussions about offensive weapons continue among NATO allies. Joining us now is Andriy Ordinovich, retired Colonel of Armed Forces of Ukraine from Kyiv. Mr. Ordinovich, welcome to the programme.
Thank you for inviting me. Thank you very much.
Now, why is the US administration currently reluctant to supply Ukraine with longer-range weapons?
Such kind of discussion is going on forth and back. One day, the discussion that they would supply, another day, some kind of pause. But this type of the military equipment is very crucial and decisive from the different perspective, and do have the military, political, logistical and psychological effect. Everything would depend on the political will, because using these weapons, Ukraine could help to deter further Russian aggravation of the war. Second, it could also defend critical infrastructure. It could boost confidence among Ukrainian troops, as well as to undermine some kind of psychological and morale of Russian troops if we would have such a weapon in hands.
Okay, and what role do Patriot air defence systems play in Ukraine's defence strategy, and how is NATO contributing to their delivery?
Look, we are...
Looks like we're having...
Yeah.
Sorry, we've got you back. Yes.
Okay, we are fighting defensive war. This war is not the reason of Ukraine, the reason of Russia. And this defensive war and ballistic Patriot system is very important. First and foremost, to shut down different type of the ballistic, aeroballistic, supersonic missiles. As an example, in June 2025, the Russian used against us 8 aeroballistic missiles, as well as 14 ballistic missiles. And the only Patriot system could tackle this issue. Second, it gives us a leverage to defend our critical infrastructure, because for the last time, the main targets of Russian missiles is the civilian infrastructure, school, university, medical facility, and so on, and also helping to boost our confidence that we are able to defend our country and bring the appropriate condition for the peace agreement.
Okay, and lastly, what are the military risks and implications if Ukraine were allowed to target deep inside Russian territory, such as Moscow?
First of all, it's going to help Ukraine to deter further offensive capability of Russia, because the long-range missiles are mainly targeting the deep in Russia to undermine their stocks, their logistical hubs, as well as bridges, in order to slow down the offensive capability. Second, it is interrupt some kind of logistical communication line and trying to persuade Russian to pull all logistical assets more far away from the border or line of contact, which are helping to delay the logistical supply for the troops, as well as reducing some combat capabilities. And third one, it's also giving to the Russian troops undermining to Russian troops some kind of psychological and moral aspect, because they see the confidence in Ukrainian troops, they see the ability to interrupt and reduce on daily basis. They are losing and killing action, wounded in action, 1,000 troops close to Ukrainian contact lines and around Ukraine, what they are, like in Kursk region or Sumy region, Zaporizhia, and so on.
Okay, Mr. Ordanovich, thank you so much for joining us on the program today.
Thank you for having me.
Nearly 7,000 Afghan nationals are being relocated to the UK following a major data breach by the British military that exposed the personal details of nearly 19,000 applicants seeking refuge after the Taliban takeover. The breach, risking the safety of individuals and families, affected up to 100,000 people and was discovered in August 2023 after some data appeared on Facebook. A secret resettlement scheme was set up 9 months later to protect those affected. The operation remained hidden until a court judge lifted a reporting ban this week. With less than 3 weeks until Donald Trump's new tariffs take effect, trade partners are reacting swiftly. Some are calling the move unfair, others are racing to cut deals before the 1st of August deadline.
Germany's powerful car makers are sounding the alarm over US President Donald Trump's planned 30% tariff on European imports, which are set to begin on the 1st of August. The Mittelstand, the core of Germany's economy, warns that the measure could seriously harm manufacturing and export sectors.
If the US tariffs were to actually be implemented to the extent that has been threatened, this would of course have a massive impact on our American business. It would completely change our position on the American market, and we would have to see how we could react to this situation.
The European Union has called the tariffs unacceptable and fears they could bring transatlantic trade to a halt. Italian Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni urged a fast-track agreement with Washington, saying the EU must work with the US and the European Commission to secure a deal that benefits both sides.
We must avoid at all costs a trade war between the two sides of the Atlantic. We will continue, together with the other leaders and in constant contact with the Commission, to work towards an agreement that can be mutually beneficial and must be concluded before next August 1st.
Meanwhile, Trump has revealed major progress in Asia. He says a trade deal with Vietnam is nearly finalized, lowering US tariffs from 46% to 20%. However, goods illegally rerouted through Vietnam will still face a 40% tax.
We have a Vietnam deal, and I would say that that deal is being pretty well set. It's pretty well set. Again, that's an opening of their country. They've opened it up. Just so you know, these were closed countries. They were wonderful people. wonderful leaders, very strong, smart leaders, but their countries were close to us, but our country wasn't close to them. And so I said, you got to open up your country. So we're going to see.
Trump also announced that Indonesia will pay 19% tariffs, while the United States pays none, gaining full access to Indonesian markets. In Brazil, Vice President Geraldo Alckmin says the country will push to reverse the new 50% tax hike on Brazilian goods. He criticized the move as unfair and hinted at a need to extend the negotiation timeline.
And what we heard here is negotiation. In other words, a commitment to reviewing matters that align with the proposal of the Brazilian government and President Lula. It was also pointed out that the time frame is tight, that it's a short deadline, and that we should perhaps work to extend it.
Other countries Trump has threatened with high tariffs include Canada, Mexico, Japan, and South Korea. The American president had paused his harshest tariff plans earlier this year, but this month he brought them back, sending warning letters to many countries with a deadline of the 1st of August.
United States President Donald Trump is calling for legal action against Senator Adam Schiff over alleged mortgage fraud. 6 years ago, Schiff led the House of Representatives impeachment inquiry that accused him in seeking political favours. Here's what we know so far.
US President Donald Trump has called for Democratic Senator Adam Schiff to be brought to justice over alleged mortgage fraud. The accusation centers on Schiff declaring a Maryland home as his primary residence to secure a better mortgage rate. Trump claims this constitutes a sustained pattern of possible mortgage fraud. President cited National Mortgage Association, Fannie Mae's reported findings, adding that the Housing Finance Agency has referred the case to the Justice Department for potential prosecution. However, DOJ, Fannie Mae, and agency have declined to comment publicly. Schiff, who denies any wrongdoing, says both of his mortgage lenders were aware he used homes in Maryland and California year-round. A spokesperson dismissed the allegations as politically motivated. The senator, long targeted by Trump, led the 2019 impeachment inquiry that accused the president of withholding military aid to Ukraine in exchange for political favors. Though Trump was impeached by the House, the Senate acquitted him. Schiff responded on social media, calling Trump's latest accusation a political retaliation against his perceived enemies.
Devastating flash floods have hit parts of New Jersey in the US, leaving 2 people dead and entire neighbourhoods underwater. Authorities have declared a state of emergency as the cleanup begins and the full scale of the damage is being assessed.
Floodwaters have tore through New Jersey, swallowing cars, cutting off roads and leaving behind a trail of destruction. Footage filmed by a bus passenger in Gutenberg shows murky water pouring onto the streets and inside the vehicle. In Plainfield, streets resembled lakes with cars submerged and homes surrounded by rising water. And aerials from Somerset County revealed the scale of flooding in residential areas. New Jersey's Governor Phil Murphy declared a state of emergency and confirmed that 2 people had died in Plainfield when their vehicle was swept away by floodwaters.
We had some serious weather that hit us last night, and we had, sadly, 2 fatalities in Plainfield and a car that was swept away. Stay tuned. We'll have a better sense of, God willing, there's no more fatalities that we don't know about. We'll have a better sense of the damages over the next 48 hours, and we'll make sure we keep folks posted. But please keep the families of those loved ones in your prayers, of those who lost their lives, as well as folks who may be displaced from homes.
The governor said that some areas were hit with more than 6 inches of rain under 3 hours. Major roads remain shut, and emergency crews are still assessing the scale of damage across the state. Officials are urging people to avoid travel and to keep clear of floodwaters as further storms remain a threat.
In southeastern Spain, anger over a recent assault a week ago has sparked days of unrest and anti-migrant clashes. The town of Torre Pacheco locals rallied Tuesday demanding action. as tensions between far-right groups and North African migrants continue to escalate.
Dozens of residents gathered in Torre Pacheco on Tuesday to protest against migrants, following 4 nights of violent clashes between far-right groups and North African residents and workers in the Murcia region. The tensions flared after a local man in his 60s was assaulted last week. Authorities say they've arrested 3 Moroccan nationals in connection with the attack, including a 19-year-old believed to be the main suspect. Locals describe a growing sense of fear.
We are tired of this situation, very tired. We go out and we are insecure. I have 2 children and they have to go out because it's their town. But I'm always extremely worried when they are out in the street.
The solution? For them to leave, that's the best thing I can think of. That's the solution. Those who don't have legal paperwork should leave. That's the only thing.
Police deployed more than 120 officers to maintain order and have arrested at least 14 people since the violence began. Leaders of the local Moroccan community have called for calm and urged young people to stay at home for the time being. Migrants, many of them second generation, make up about 1/3 of Torre Pacheco's population of about 40,000.
The European Union unveiled investment plans of up to €2.5 billion for Armenia as part of the Global Gateway strategy, aiming to boost infrastructure and economic ties. An additional €1.5 million was pledged to support Armenia's independent media. These commitments followed Prime Minister of Armenia, Nikol Pashinyan's working visit to Brussels, where he met with EU leaders Antonio Costa and Ursula von der Leyen. Both sides had reaffirmed their deepening partnership, while Pashinyan reflected on the discussion as productive and substantive. The EU Council has extended the mandate of Magdalena Grono as Special Representative for the South Caucasus and the crisis in Georgia until August 2027. This move highlights the EU's commitment to supporting peace and stability in this strategically important and conflict-affected region. Joining us is Murat Muradov, Deputy Director at Topçu Bashov Center. Welcome to the program.
Good afternoon.
Now, what are the key responsibilities of the EU Special Representative for the South Caucasus and the crisis in Georgia?
In general, this institution serves for the EU to establish more, let's say, contacts with the relevant governments. So in case of Mrs. Grono, it's of course Azerbaijan, Armenia, and Georgia, so kind of South Caucasus. So since she was appointed last year, actually she did a good job in strengthening this personal relations with secondary citizens. So in case of Azerbaijan and Armenia, it was definitely more successful than Georgia for a variety of reasons. But I must say that she was appointed last year when the relations between EU and Baku were maybe at their low. And since then, actually they have improved a lot. And I wouldn't exclude her personal influence, since this institution serves as a bridge, let's say, between Brussels officials who are often constrained by the position of the different institutions, which may be often biased by the national and party allegiances. So she can serve as a more flexible, more independent tool for EU foreign policy making, not really dependent on these factors. So I think she, in Baku in general, this last year, or say almost a year since she's become in charge, it was positive when it comes to China's Brussels, and especially since visit of colors to Azerbaijan this April, we can see serious progress, and I think there's been some trust building as well. So when it comes to Georgia, honestly, I feel like the EU somehow lost its capacity to influence the situation on the ground. And since last November, basically, there's been exchange of criticism, of, say, mutual accusations. And right now, I don't see how Brussels can really affect the position of Greece. And we hear now that there are already threats of stopping the visa regime, which of course may be a blow to a significant part of the Georgian population who benefits from being able to go to work in the European countries or to easily get a study, like visas, go to study. But yeah, I think the EU so far has tried to apply more conservative methods of influencing Tbilisi, and they haven't really succeeded.
Okay, what are the main challenges currently facing the South Caucasus region, Murat?
I think South Caucasus, since it's a small region with direct interest of several big powers, be it Russia, Turkey, Iran, is EU, US, and now China, and even see that India, for example, has been, in recent years, has been taking more attention to this region. So the main challenge is not to get entrapped into this game, which, I mean, as we can see from the fate of some countries, may end up tragically. And I think that's why the Armenian peace process has acquired such a huge significance. And I mean, it was Baku which has always insisted on excluding, let's say, third countries from the process. And so we managed to establish this bilateral channel, which is proved effective, which has been recently admitted even by the Armenian side in Abu Dhabi. So yeah, I think just basically keeping peace in the situation of global turmoil and instability would be a big gain for all of us. And I see that for now, like if we manage to establish a mechanism of three countries for at least consulting each other on key strategic issues, on issues of security, I mean, we will become a much more safe place.
Okay, and lastly, how does the EU aim to support peace, stability and conflict resolution in the South Caucasus through this mandate?
I think it was important that at some point Brussels acquiesced to the new reality in the region, and it stopped to insist, let's say, on playing a directly mediating role, which after September 2023 actually came to like that end, mostly due to some mistakes made by the EU officials when they EU statements unfairly criticizing Azerbaijan, if you remember, after the September 2023 operation. So for a few months, there was like I think quite a tense period, but since then the EU started to build bridges, and we can see from the visit of Kala. So Azerbaijan is now viewed as an important partner, and most divisive issues in the agenda between Baku and Brussels have been, say, kind of, out of circulation. So I think it is important. Also, now Brussels seems to be ready to more actively invest in, say, in the region, and there are talks that in case of a peace treaty between Azerbaijan and Armenia, both countries may receive significant, let's say, financial assistance from the EU. It will all play an important role. And when it comes to Georgia, unfortunately, so the confrontation doesn't seem to be ending soon. I think unless Tbilisi and Brussels again find a new formula of mutually beneficial cooperation, European status in the region will remain a bit hung in the air.
Okay, Murat, thank you so much for joining the program today.
Thank you.
A residential building has collapsed in the central district of Tbilisi, prompting ongoing rescue operations and a formal investigation. Our Georgia correspondent Nini Nikolashvili has the details.
2 people are now confirmed dead and 1 injured after the residential building collapsed in the heart of Tbilisi near Station Square. According to the Ministry of Internal Affairs, rescue and recovery efforts are ongoing and the area remains sealed off. An investigation has been launched under Article 240 of the Criminal Code, covering violation of construction and safety regulations. Earlier, the building has been officially classified as an emergency structure, deemed too dangerous for even rehabilitation. The city mayor, Kakhakalze, admitted today that the risks were well known, and yet the residents were still living inside when the building gave way. The authorities have offered relocation to tenants, but under the voluntary agreement that required full consensus. The consensus never came, and authorities chose not to enforce an evacuation despite knowing the structure could fail. The city mayor, Kakhakalze, described this incident as an accident. Meanwhile, the public defender's office announced that this would examine issues related to residential safety in the collapsed building. It's Nini Nikolashvili reporting from Tbilisi, A News.
Azerbaijan's President Ilham Aliyev welcomed Gurbanguly Berdimuhamedov, chairman of the People's Council of Turkmenistan, during an official visit to Baku. Gurbanguly Berdimuhamedov said his trip aimed to reinforce partnership, build on past achievements, and explore new areas of cooperation. President Ilham Aliyev described the visit as a step toward further strengthening ties grounded in long-standing fraternal relations, highlighting strong cooperation in energy, transport and humanitarian sectors. Kazakhstan is sticking with the OPEC Plus deal despite producing more oil than its targets this year. The country's Prime Minister made the announcement at a press conference. He clarified that Kazakhstan is not an OPEC member but participates in OPEC Plus. He said a $49 billion expansion at the Tengiz field under a production sharing agreement prevents limiting partner output, causing the country to exceed production targets this year. Kazakhstan has informed OPEC Plus members of this in advance. A forest fire that started in western Turkey's Tekirdağ province has spread to neighbouring Çanakkale. Firefighting crews say they're working around the clock to contain the flames. The blaze began around noon in a non-forest area and later spread toward the town of Kavakköy in Çanakkale's Gelibolu district. The cause is still unknown. Firefighting teams are continuing their efforts on the ground, trying to bring the situation under control. And that's all we have for now from Baku. Thank you for watching and stay tuned to A News.